Welcome, everybody. This is Sherry Bowers with Connected Spirit, Connected Biz Summer Giveaway Event. And today I've got the pleasure of being able to speak with Dale Suggs, who's here with me today. And we're going to learn a little bit more about who he is, what he does, and the wonderful services that are available. So thanks for being on the call with me today.
Fantastic to be here. Thank you, Sherry.
Oh, my pleasure. So, a lot of the people probably aren't familiar with you. So let's, kind of start with, tell them a little bit about how you got started with what you do and what you do.
Well, after decades of being a pastor in the established church, in
Hmm.
2014, my wife Shelley and I decided to create a kind of alternative experimental congregation that would be a safe place to land for people who had been injured by church or excluded by church. And so we created this small community that met in a park once a month, and it was just a lovely gathering. Over time, we took on the name Beloved, then we became Beloved Way, and basic message: you are a beloved child of God. God delights in you. That's how I would translate Mark 1:11. And then in 2015, were exposed to the work of Dr. Frank Rogers Jr.
Hmm.
And he had been working his entire life putting together, really because of his life experience, an integrated set of spiritual disciplines that came to be called the compassion practice. And the compassion practice essentially is the how to of cultivating compassion for oneself and others. The truth is, everybody says you're supposed to believe in compassion, but nobody teaches you how to do it. And so the
And
compassion
it's
practice, yeah.
so needed.
Yeah, so the compassion practice is that how to, and we got into it more. And in 2016, we began teaching it ourselves. And by 2021, I think, we established a nonprofit, Beloved Compassion Network, with the vision of being this agent of transformation. As we're empowering individuals, organizations to learn compassion, teach compassion, embody compassion. And so that's where we're at. I spend most of my time teaching classes about the how to of cultivating compassion for self and others.
That is fascinating to me because I see, there's such, in my opinion, right, there is such a need for more of that just across the globe. And
Mhm.
and a lot of people just don't, sometimes it's hard to figure these things out by yourself. So
Oh,
that is
it's awful doing it by yourself. It's just like this one big should.
right.
Be compassionate. How am I supposed to pull that off? Because, my internal natural way of being is either to, lash out or run away,
Mm-hmm.
which is about really, from our perspective, giving over to an interior movement, an emotion, an impulse, and just kind of letting it drive your bus for a while. Or you're stuffing emotions, impulses down like you're pushing a buoy underwater. I don't know if you've ever done that in a lake, pushing a
It's gonna
buoy
hit you in the
underwater.
face.
Yeah, yeah. When you least expect it, it's going to come pounding up. I think road rage is about that.
Yeah.
It's not about somebody cutting you off. It's about you've been stuffing down frustration and anger and disappointment and grief for so long, and then there's an activating event and you explode.
Yeah.
So a
Yeah.
lot of what we do is help people tend to those interior fears, longings, aching wounds, gifts that have been obstructed. And when
Hmm.
you tend to those, it's amazing. Compassion begins to flow just naturally. And then you begin to see how you can tend to those hurts in others
Yeah.
rather than just constantly responding to the words or the behavior. Because a lot of times the words and behavior is someone else acting out on their impulse.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think 9 times out of 10, whatever it's aimed at, you're receiving it, but it's not about you,
No, really not.
not at all. Hmm.
No. But
So,
we take
so
it
with,
personally.
oh, we do. Um, so, so being that you're doing that, is there like a specific group that you tend to work with more? I would think that that's, obviously that's something that anybody, everybody, could benefit from, but do you find that you're targeting more specific groups?
Well, because we kind of came out of a church, we're non-sectarian at this point, but
Hmm.
because we came out of a church, we began working with churches and
Hmm.
began working with clergy, um, who are in that. You talk about people who have a should about
Yeah,
being
yeah.
compassionate. It's like you've got to be compassionate, and on those days when you can't, you're berating yourself. If I was just a more spiritual person, if I was just a
Right.
better person, I would have more compassion. And that's just not how your interior world works. So we kind of started there, and then we began on a much broader audience. And we discovered pretty quickly that people 50 years and older not only sign up more, but go deeper into the process. It's
Yeah.
25 hours of curriculum if you're going to do the entire thing. We have
Wow.
it, we have it set out in levels, level
Hmm.
1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 is let's get into it. Let's talk about how to be compassionate to people who are really difficult, people that you would consider an enemy.
Yeah.
Um, that's level 3. Level 1, you just kind of learn to swim. Level 2, you're learning self-compassion. And then level 3, you're really into it. But we found that people 50 and older were
Hmm.
more receptive and more into it. I think it's because people 50 and older have had it all fail at least once.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't believe that if they do all the right things, make all the right decisions, read all the right books, that everything will go well for you. And the truth is, you can do everything perfectly, and it all go sideways. And when that happens, you got to rethink
Yeah.
everything that you've been storing up about your life beliefs for 50 years.
Yep.
So that was a group that we found we're drawn to it. Since then, we've discovered that all helping professions, social workers, nurses, are really drawn to this particular work.
Yeah.
And we've just recently been asked to work in colleges and universities. And I was asked by a director of a student program at a university not far from here a little while ago, will this really work for 18 to 25-year-olds? And then, like 2 weekends ago, we did an event where we had a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old. And we did one of the highest level things we do in level 3. I just wanted to do it as an experiment.
Right.
They nailed it. They completely bought into the process, understood it, were able to kind of set aside their reactivity so they could really tend to what's going on in the other. That, we were working with enemies, people who
Right.
really, and I'm now like, yeah, any age group can do this. The question is, will you? You
Yeah.
know, will you start and will you continue and will you complete the process? And it's a practice. All contemplative practices are practices.
Yeah.
You got to practice and practice and practice. Most of us
There's
sample
no,
quality.
right.
It's like we're going into Costco. Oh, can I try a little bit of Buddhist spirituality?
I
Uh,
like that.
no,
Yeah.
you have to invest yourself and practice over time in order for any of this to really make internal changes.
Yeah. So true. So true. And I love to hear that about the younger kids. I've got two college age kids, and just watching them and their groups of friends, and just the differences between how they're growing up and how obviously we grew up.
Mhm.
And in a way they've got less baggage yet at this moment to kind of help them step into that. But they're, if you can catch them when they're young, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
you've got the whole rest of your life to practice.
Yes.
And so that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And these the 13-year-old and 16-year-old, these are like over invested boys playing softball, baseball year round. They were able to come to the event because they were in a break between school baseball and Little League. They had a 2-week break, so they came to our event. And
Uh-huh.
fantastic. I
Yeah.
heard they were coming and said, let's just go for it. Let's just go for it. And they were beautiful. And I think if, two normal teenage boys who spend most of their life on a softball diamond can invest and work this practice, yeah,
Yeah.
it's doable.
Anybody can. Yeah. That's so exciting. So tell us a little bit about the gift you're sharing.
Oh, the gift. Well, it's called 50 Days in Sacred Presence.
Mhm.
And what it is an invitation to invest in a practice for 50 days. And the practice itself is one of the core level 1 practices from our curriculum, which we call Cultivating Compassion.
Mhm.
And this particular practice is teaching you how to sit in the sweet spot of a past sacred moment. Most spiritual traditions, when they talk about what do you do when you're in this point of stress, maybe even dark night of the soul, what
Mhm.
you have to do is remember previous moments of consolation. Well, there's this practice where you remember and re-enter a sacred moment and experience in a way that you can just sit in the presence of the sacred and let that presence change you. And if you do this over and over again, your heart just kind of becomes anchored in this sacred presence. And more than that, your brain pathways are literally rewired so that more and more, and it's easier and easier to access a moment of awe and wonder and spaciousness rather than a moment of fear and anxiety, which is where most of us
Yeah.
are on that initial response. That immediately we're up like this. What if the habitual response was to go into a place of groundedness and
Yeah.
expansiveness and knowledge and feeling in your bones the presence of the sacred with
Mhm.
you. That's the practice. I set it up as 50 days. I didn't know if anybody could do 50 days. Well, they did. And what we discovered is that there is a shift around day 30,
Yeah.
um, where I don't know, maybe an invitation becomes a practice, becomes a habit, becomes I don't
Yeah.
know. Well, it just becomes more and more an involuntary response almost
Mhm.
around day 30. And so those last few weeks are about anchoring it in place.
Mhm.
So that's the free gift. You come in, we give you access to the video practice, and over time, we give you more handles, more cues to help you kind of progress, maintain the practice and go deeper along the way.
Oh, sounds wonderful.
Well, we love it. I still am pastoring a little experimental church, and I tell you, all of my pastoral care and all of my work in spiritual deepening with people begins with this practice: 50 days in sacred presence.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, just as you were explaining it, it made me think of, there's been several instances in my life where it was so potent. It was so profound. And if you could, and I've often thought, wow, if you could just be there all the time, that would be fabulous. So
Yeah, all
very
the time's
exciting.
unlikely,
It's
but
true, but more
uh,
often, if you
more
could pull
often,
that in.
and for the response to be more natural.
Yeah.
just gaining access to our compassionate core and to that infinite source of compassion that really holds the universe.
Yeah.
Um, that's where we're trying to go. We just have these wonderful stories of people who have. Most recently, there was a woman who's telling me a story. She had postpartum depression,
Mhm.
and her children are now in their teens, and she regularly still has panic attacks at night.
Wow.
She wakes up early in the night. It begins. It kind of takes her over and goes through the next day or the next day or two. And she was in about day 35 of the 50 days, and she said, I woke up and the panic attack was beginning. And she said it was almost like I moved outside of my body and I was a third person observer as my body just sank into sitting in the calm of sacred presence. And I watched me go back to sleep and
Oh,
woke
that's beautiful.
8 hours later. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, yeah,
That's what we're talking about.
yeah, it's real. It's real. The transformation is real, but it does take practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I could go on and on. I could listen to the stories all day, all day long. So if for everybody that's watching the video, the link to the gift that you need to get, it's going to be below the video. And if somebody wanted to reach out and connect with you and get started with your program, what's the best way for them to do that? Do you have a
Um,
website?
yes, yes. Our website is belovedcompassionnetwork.org. It's really long, I know, but
That's okay.
we wanted to be really clear about who we are. We are
Yeah.
a network of people supporting one another in the journey toward a more compassionate way of life. That's how we just explain it. So belovedcompassionnetwork.org.
Mhm.
And you can reach out to me personally. And my email, lovingly enough, is dale@belovedcompassionnetwork.org. So if you can get Beloved Compassion Network down, you can find us. You
Excellent.
put in Beloved Compassion in your search engine. We're the first thing that will come up.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us and sharing about what you're doing. It's so needed, so important. Everybody needs to get your gift. I'm going to go get your gift. And thank you again for being on with us.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation, Sherry. This has been just wonderful. And you're right, I could tell stories all day long.
Oh, I know. But it's good stuff, it makes people, I think it makes people realize, whoa, shoot, that I want that,
Yeah.
that could happen for me too. So it's very wonderful. So thank you again for being on. Everybody get the gift and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.
Bye-bye.